Welcome to our adult ed program for Get Moving. Just explain that England not being Get Moving. Who knew? It's been perfectly. So I want to thank Pete Walsh for coming tonight. He did write a little bit about his background and we put it in the newsletter. I don't know if you want to say a few words, but
I'm prepared to say a few words tonight, yes.
okay, and that's great. Just a sec. And we do have some snacks here. My only request is that if your hands get a little schmutzy, there's some wipes back there that you can use the bathroom, so you don't want to mess up any of this beautiful stuff here. So with that,
Okay.
I'll turn it over to Pete.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome in the room and on Zoom. My name is Pete Walsh, and I am a hobby weaver. I am retired, and I like to spend my time weaving. So I started weaving back in the late 70s, and actually this was the first rug I made, and it's been on the floor of our houses ever since. You see it's a bit worn out and all the time it's gone, but this was the first one, and it was woven at the same time as this one, which is really interesting because they feel very different and they look very different, and we'll talk about that later on why that is. But you can actually put enough yarn on your loom to make multiple things that do them quite differently. So we'll talk about that. So what is weaving? Do you want to bring the first slide?
Yeah. You want me to go forward?
Yes. Now, if you ask my brother what weaving is, he will tell you that it's taking thin pieces of willow and making baskets. And he's right, but he's in England right now, so we're going to talk about fabric weaving tonight. And essentially, what fabric weaving is, well, sorry. We good? Yeah. It's basically taking a set of threads that run this way and interlacing them with a set of threads that run that way. And the weaving definitions are the warp and the weft. And we're going to talk about those on the next slide. So this sort of introduces the notion that there's a language that goes along with weaving. So we're going to go through some definitions first because I'll use the terminology and we're going to know what it means. So, John, go. So the warp. So the warp is a series of threads that runs front to back on the loom. Any loom, there's a loom here, that's the way they run. This one, if it's a tapestry loom, it's running up and down. And then the weft is the yarn that is going backwards and forth between the warp threads to create the fabric. Okay, so we'll just click through this now.
Yeah.
So the next thing we need to know is the header. Now, you can probably all see this loom here. The threads that are running back to front run through heddles, and the heddles look like this. This is a metal one. It's it separates all the warp thread. It's a little hole in the middle, and that thread goes through it. These are more recent main heddles. You can see there's a hole in the middle there, and the warp threads go through. And that allows.
So every one of those heddles have a hole?
Yes, every one of them. Yeah, we're going to talk about that as well because that's a consideration, you know, when you decide what you want to make. So the shaft is the frame, this thing, that the heddles sit in. So these are all heddles here. Here's a number of them. You can just pass them around, have a look at them. These were extras that were on the loom. I took them off. The shaft is what holds the heddle. So the heddle holds the warp thread. You can see them there, moving it down. The shaft holds the heddles.
I have to fix something. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Many of us who grew up in the 50s and 60s made pot holders. Yeah.
That's what it is, yeah.
That thing is that.
Okay, so that's the shaft. We talked about that. And the next slide, Mark, please. Is the shuffle. So I have a number of shuttles here. The one on the loom right now is loaded and ready to go. We're going to read them later on. These are a couple of shuttles, just regular shuttles. This is a thinner one. I use this on the big loom at home. I use this primarily when I have a thinner yarn that I'm using. This is also a shuttle. So if you're using a thick woolen yarn, then it's useful to have it on something like this, and you just sort of pass it back and forth through the warp threads. The shed. Now, when you are weaving, you're opening an area to throw the shuttle through, right through there. You see the gap in
Yeah.
there? That's the shed. And you need to make sure that you get a nice clean shed. And that the threads that are supposed to be down, go down, and the ones that come up, go up. And I'll tell you about some mistakes on a piece over there where that doesn't happen quite the way it's supposed to. And then if you don't separate the threads correctly, then you won't get the correct pattern. So if you go to the next, I think we have a treadle.
Nope.
The treadle. So the treadles are down here. So this is a bit like, you know, your hip bone's connected to your knee bone. The treadles are connected to the shafts in a very specific way. So I actually had, well, so this is a twill is a type of weave. It looks like this. I don't have it. Let me see, twill, 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 here we go. This is twill. Tweed. So.
That's beautiful.
So if you were to weave on this, you would go 3, pass the shuttle, 4, 5, 6. And that's controlling different sets of shafts. We'll try it later. The reed, this is a
Oops.
small reed that I took from that table loom right there. Once you've passed the weft through the warp thread, you need a way of pushing it right up to form a fabric. This is called a bell here, where the fabric actually starts to develop. So this is a reed right here, but this is a small one. If you want to have a look, it's like a big metal cone. A big, sorry, a big, expensive metal cone. And last but not least is a loom. And the loom really is what holds it all together. So I do have a number of looms here tonight. This one we're going to throw later if you want. There's a table loom over here. There's a table loom in the back over there, which is over there, ready to go. And then there's a band loom here, a little band loom. I think some of you have seen it. That's also ready to go. Mark, do we have-
You want this one? Oh, next.
I'm so sorry.
So here's a basic loom. And it looks very similar to this one. You can see all the pieces we talked about. The shaft over here, the handles are here, the warp is running from the back through to the front. This is where all the cloth fabric is coming off. The treadles down here, operating the shafts up and down. So this is a very, very basic loom. Which this is. So Mark, you want to just
Yeah.
So all kinds of looms, different types of looms. We'll look at some individually, Mark, if you just want to go through these. So this is a small table loom. It's very similar to this one, which I deconstructed so I could get the read out. The next one, this is an ankle loom or a band loom, which looks just like this one. That's this one over. This is just a small loom. This is the warp. The weft goes through on the shuttle here. And you get your shed by moving these up and down. A little bit more manual labor involved in that. And just hand that back to you, thank you. And actually, this is interesting. This is a set of cards. And I didn't bring cards. I have some cards at home, but they've got holes in the corners. And if you put the threads through, as you roll the cards around, you form a shed. So the thread would be coming up here and here, there's a shed there, then you move it, and then there's another shed here. So it's actually tied into one of these looms. It would sit sort of up front here. You want to. Now, this is a very primitive loom, but it's a loom. It's a frame. Today would be considered more of a tapestry loom, and you can buy tapestry looms. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a more modern one. But the shed is formed by the sticks that are running through here. And then instead of using a shuttle here, the threads are just being individually sort of woven through. So when you see these and they're expensive, it's because they're very labor intensive to make these. So a loom like this with a shuttle and the ability to separate the yarn threads is a fairly significant advantage over this.
Wow.
So these are just looms. This one looks pretty similar to this one. This is very much like the one that I had. It just needed a lot of TLC. So I had a loom that was built in the 1940s. It was gifted to me, and I gifted it to somebody else. But it was it did the job. But this is, you know, if you were buying a floor loom today, you'd probably get something like this.
Are all of these looms or all the looms that you have things that you acquired, or do you make looms?
So that's the only one I made. This little one here.
The little one.
This one, Laurie and I, well, so this is what we started my weaving journey about 5 years ago. So after I left England, I brought these two with me. We used them, these two rugs. I didn't do any weaving for years and years. And about 5 years ago, Laurie and I were out in Lancaster County looking for a quilt for a wedding gift. And we went into a shop, and in the corner was a pile of loom. Somebody had dropped it off and said, hey, you know, can you sell it for me? I recognized it for what it was. I was deconstructed at the time. We hummed and hard. We went home, and Laurie said, you really want it, don't you? I do. The next day we went back and we bought it. And that was about 5, 6 years ago, maybe. And that's when I started again. And then I got involved with an organization that I'll tell you about. And then I really got into weaving. And I have another room at home, which is very large, but I use a lot. Do you want to just step out and see some? So now this is a really interesting thing. And if you look at this guy, he's sort of sitting in a concrete hole. There are several interesting things about this loom. It's very wide.
Yes.
Very wide. So it would be really difficult to throw a shuttle through. Because then you've got to get to the other end and catch it, and then you've got to throw it through and get to the other end and catch it.
2 people.
So it's actually using something called a flying shuttle, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But you see there's a box, excuse me, there's a box here, and there's a box on the other end, and it's sitting right on the front of this whole assembly is called beta. So there'll be a box here and a box there, and he's operating with it. There's a cord, and he has the handle in his hand, and when he pulls it, the shuttle goes flying across, and then he changes the shed, and then he pulls it the other way, and it goes flying back to the way. Now, I would love to see something like this in operation, but the fabric he's making is fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. The other thing you see here is what's called a temple, and I didn't bring one with me tonight, but when you're weaving, you're interlacing a thread through like this, and if you pull it too tightly, then your weaving starts to pull in, and it's very easy to do. You can see it happening here, even though I took great care not to do it. A temple is a device which you would put across your work. It's got teeth, metal teeth on each side, and it keeps the newly woven fabric tight. It prevents that drawing. Wanna roll some? So this is an automated loom called a Dobby loom. It's considered a hobby loom, so not commercial yet. It's got a number of shuttle boxes. It's operated by a computer which sits on this side. So you're not actually pulling them back. It's actually programmed in, the controls are up here. And this has a different way of feeding the yarn into the loom. So on this loom, the yarn is wound around a beam at the back. We manually load it. I always go from the front to the back. This one, you would actually load each of these individual pieces separately. And this allows you to create yarns that are miles long. So you can put a huge warp on this loom and just set it going. Continue with on. So this is this was built in Sweden. It's a 59-inch countermarch loom, and we have one sitting at home in our formerly guest bedroom. Let's just move along. Here's me sitting at it, making the first project that I made on it, which was half a dozen towels, look like that. And you can see this is the smaller shuttle I will use on this loom. But the advantage of a loom like this is when one set of warp thread goes up, the other set goes down, so your shed is always very big. So you see the shed in here? So, I mean, you could get a very large shuttle through there. Okay, Mike, do you want to go on to that?
Yeah, but what's the advantage of the large shuttle? You said you can get a large shuttle. Oh,
You get a lot more yarn on this bobbin than you can on this one.
got it.
But I actually like this one. It's got a really nice feel to it as you're pushing it back and forth. So you sort of get used to it. I still use this on the big loom all the time, even though it means that I'm rethreading
Yeah.
the bobbin periodically. So I think the next step. So this one, this is a loom.
Should
This
I?
is a Toyota industrial loom. Yeah, do you want to set it going?
Yeah.
So the handles are in these shafts back here. It's got all the same pieces as a traditional loom. I don't know whether you can get rid of this one.
Yeah, hold on. I could do that. I think. Thought I saw an X.
Don't worry about it. The reed is here. This is the top of the reed, and when the video restarts, you'll see it flying backward and forward. This is running at 800 revolutions a minute. It's making multiple towels across the, so the water is being fed into these big rollers at the back, and you can see the individual pieces. There's a weft thread goes across, and then somewhere in here, it's cutting and hemming these individual towel rolls. Do you want to start that again? And you can. Now, this loom does not use a traditional shuttle. These are guns here, and the weft is blown across through the wall. So it's a single piece. It goes all the way across. I don't know how they calibrate it, but it's wide enough to go across those 4 towels, and there are multiples of them for the different colors that appear in the towels. Yeah, it really is. I'd love to see something like this done, but anyway, go ahead. We'll just finish this one up. So.
Was this the next one?
Would be brief because history, I actually failed history at school. So history of weaving, it's funny, but if you Google it, this is what you see. It's very old, it's been around forever. And a lot of the early weaving was done on wooden frames and there's none of it left. So, you know, it's kind of hard, but if you look, you'll see people are wearing clothes back then. So, you know, they had to go walk or something.
Mishra that was built in the desert. They had all that fabric.
But what we do know, and it was the same for a lot of crafts, it was a family unit that was, you know, contained the crafts and certainly, and there are crafts in northern England that, you know, where I grew up, where things were done in the household, everybody had a piece of it. And weaving was the same. Now, the earliest known application dates back about 6,000 years, and it's a tartan dress. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a picture of it. It was discovered in Egypt. It was carbon dated by a team from the University of Oxford to be about 5,000-6,000 years old. It's actually in the Museum of Archaeology at the University College in London. If you ever get there and want to see it, it's the oldest known piece of woven fabric.
Hmm.
Do you want to go to the next
Mhm.
slide? Yeah. So over time, of course, the demand for the fabric just outweighed the ability of families to produce it. And certainly, British royalty is not going to want to wear what Gill Smith and his wife made in their living room. Right? They're going to want something fancy and velvety and something beautiful. And the whole production of cloth moved out of the cottage industry into commercial ventures. And by the Middle Ages, and a lot of this is skewed towards Europe because where I come from. And there was a very well developed chain of. I remember weaving's just a piece of the story, right? You've got to grow the flax or English sheep or whatever and fleece it and cut it whatever. But this was all by the Middle Ages. And if you look at pictures from medieval times, you'll see there's some fabulous fabric available. So there was a booming industry across Europe.
What is a fuller and a draper?
So draping is, so a tailor would typically be making clothes. A draper would be making curtains or other kinds of things. Fulling, I should have brought the other blanket. So my first blanket was made out of acrylic. And it was fine. I made it, I washed it, it was a gift for somebody. Great. My second one was made out of wool. So I made it, I washed it, and Laurie said to me, "You didn't put that in hot water, did you?" And I said, "Yeah, but it's only been for a few minutes." No, get out to there, get out to there. So of course we go, I get it out. It's supposed to be this big blanket.
Mhm.
It's all the way like this. But it is really thick.
Right.
It is really thick, and that's full. So when you take something,
Intentionally
this is
doing
being
that.
fold.
Make it thicker.
This is the blanket. It's made out of Swedish wool. It felt very different when it came off the loom. And if you feel it now, it's being folded. It's got a bit of texture to it now. And that's a fulling process. So it's between folding and felting. I think they're the same thing. I think that, and I did it with this one too. But this was in warm water for about 12 minutes and then straight out and line dried. So I learned my lesson. But depending on what you're making, so that blanket that I made is really, really warm. But it doesn't cover me.
You need one for each leg.
That's the problem there. You want to go to the next one?
Uh-huh.
Now, there were some key inventions along the way that really moved weaving along. One of them is the flying shuttle, and we've already talked about that. This is a small version of a flying shuttle. It's very heavy. It's got metal points at the end. And the shuttles run along, this is called the race here. They run along here. When you've got a shed open, they're running through here. So they're propelled either by somebody pulling a string or a machine that's pushing it through. So you can imagine when these things were introduced, was a bit scary being in mills, because you'd have rows of automated looms and these things flying past. And there's nothing really keeping them on here. It can't be because the readings come forward. So you've got to hope that, you know, when that flies along that race, it ends up in the box and not in somebody's leg who's working on the loom next to it. And there were issues when they were introduced at first, but
It's always to sit on the other side of
much wider
Jerry or have both of them slide down.
available previously.
People can't, on Zoom, can't see the loom.
I remember weaving is one part of creating fabric. So if you're weaving faster, you need to make sure
Thank you.
the fly is coming in. So this, the flying shuttle was the first one in 1933, 1965, 1765, the spinning jenny was developed, and that enabled spinning to be much more efficient than it had been before. So now you're able to spin the yarn much faster, you're able to weave it much faster and wider. But the real breakthrough came
Still
in the
getting,
early
the
1800s,
camera's getting
with
messed up.
jacquard. And if you think about this loom, there are maybe 200 threads running through here. They come forward by 4 shafts,
A little further.
which means that when I lift one of these, 50 threads come up. So that puts some limitations on the pattern that you want to create here.
Sorry.
So this gentleman, I guess, had the idea that maybe there's a different way to do this. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah. Oop. Should I start it up?
Yeah.
This is a mechanical jacquard loom. This technology was developed in France in 1803 by a weaver named Joseph Marie Jacquard. The key thing about this loom is that it controls every warp thread, the threads that go from the front to the back of the loom, individually. Because it can do that, the loom can create very complex, fancy patterns in the cloth more quickly and with greater accuracy than the technology available before this loom was developed. These cards are what carry the instructions that are read by the apparatus on the second floor that tells the loom what pattern to create. The holes in the cards are read by a series of pins up in the apparatus, and those holes tell the apparatus which threads down here should be raised for each pass of my shuttle across the warp. Some of you might recognize these cards as looking similar to computer punch cards. Back in the early days of computer technology, punch cards carried instructions that told the early computers what kind of calculations to do. So this loom is the great-great-great-grandfather of the computer technology that we all use today, and that technology started with a machine that produces cloth.
The whole time you've been talking, I thought this was like computer. So I was glad she said that.
In court. So I don't know whether you're caught in there. So the apparatus on the second floor.
Yeah, what was that?
So this is its.
Oops, that's not right.
No. So
So,
this is a 2-story loom, so I'm negotiating with Lloyd right now to figure out which bedroom is lower. Install one of these. All right, yeah, we just leave it there.
yeah,
So, and there are some jacquard looms around and operational. In England, there are some in museums. There was actually one operational out in Lancaster County, and there was a tour set up for it, and then COVID hit and it got cancelled, so I have to look into that and go out and.
So they are necessarily
The necessarily,
Story.
yes, yeah, they are. Now, obviously, the technology's moved on from there, but the concept of controlling each thread individually was just revolutionary. There is a weaver that I follow up in Vermont, and he has a jacquard loom, and he also has the apparatus to punch the cards. So what you do is you basically take a large piece of graph paper and you figure what pattern's going to be, and then you put it up here, and then where you sit on, and you type the card, and the cards are punched, and then you have to lace them all together, and then they sort of go up through the stack up into the upstairs, and that controls pulling the threads up in the machine. The last bit, take some photographs just to help explain the story of weaving. It's a wonderful organization, a wonderful institution. If you want to know more about it, I'm happy to talk to you about it later, but they use weaving there therapeutically. This is a picture of the weavery, and we're going to go visit the weavery now and talk about how you get these things. So if you want to, we're going to meet three friends first. This is Claudia. And Claudia weaves fabric primarily, which is turned into bags or jackets or throws. The weavers at Camp Hill weave. The volunteers like me help measure out the warps, put them on the looms, and then take them off the looms and help make whatever is going to be made. So Claudia comes in, she sits at her loom, very similar to this one. Although it's actually working on the table room there, and she weaves, and she'll sit there for a couple of hours and she'll just.
Do you want to mention that these are adults with learning disabilities?
Yeah, it actually said on the slide, but these are adults with learning disabilities. It's an intentional community up there. There are about 60 adults living there. There are about another 60 volunteers who take care of them. In fact, Stephen, our son Stephen, worked up there for a year. And he sort of got me involved in it.
Yeah.
When I was up there, and I realized that there was a weaving studio. I went in and had a look, and then they said, "Oh, you like weaving? Would you like to volunteer?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll just move on. We'll meet Bill. This is Bill, and he takes donated denim jeans and he cuts them into strips, and he makes denim rugs. You can see the rug developing here. And he's another guy who just sits at his room and just gets on with it. And the next picture is Charlene. Charlene is making towels. These are waffle towels of waffle pattern. You can't really tell, but you can see it's sort of indented waffly look. And these guys are just great. They just weave, and then, they may say, "Pete, I need some help," or, the shuttle went through halfway and it dropped on the floor. What do I do? And, so we help, and I go up there every Wednesday afternoon.
So do they have a shop up there?
Yes, and I'll show you some people.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
You like shopping?
yes. Yes.
Well,
Yes. So let's talk about the process of weaving. So here's the whole crux of it. Design. So the first thing you need to do is decide, what do I want to make? And I've always got several ideas in my head. I sort of struggle with what to make because there's always half a dozen things I want to make. I actually get a magazine every couple of months called Handwoven, and it's got loads of wonderful things in it. I look through here and say, "Oh, I've got to make that. Oh, yep, I got to make that one." And I can't keep up with it. So I get a lot of inspiration from magazines. I follow people online, and I see what they're doing. Some of these things are just functional. We wanted to make a tablecloth for Thanksgiving, so this was a tablecloth. It was quite a project. There were 1,000 threads in this running across, and remember, all of those threads have to go through those heddles. So it's
take hours or weeks or?
Yeah, so
something?
setting it up, so there are a
To
lot of
set up.
repetitive steps in weaving. I find them very meditative. Just to sit there with my little pulling the threads through the pedal hole. But you have to decide what you want to do. So, place mat.
room than that?
Yes, this was made on the big room that I have. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So these magazines have the patterns and tell you what to do, and what
Yes.
to put on the headals and
Yes.
all that?
Yes, and we'll talk about that later. I've got a few
That's
slides to show
great.
you how to do that. But when you look at these magazines, you will see the patterns.
Okay,
So exactly, how to line up the color. How many frames you need? There are 8 frames on this one. How to tie up the treadles, and then when you weave in, which treadles to press. It's all color coded, so you can see exactly. And they usually tell you how much warp, how much wet, where it came from, exactly what it is, and what you need. 36-inch loom, a 16-inch loom, 10 dent reed. So these should have mentioned it. Reeds are American and English reeds anyway. Are measured by the inch. So I think this is 8. It's very rusty, so it's a 10. It's the number of spaces in an inch. This is either 8 or 10. Can't tell me. You can bring it down. But anyway, it will tell you in there what kind of reed to use. And I have several at home. I've got 10, 12. This is the 12 I'm here now. I had a 20. This was done on a 20 dent reed. So you could almost go blind trying to, jab this through. And I actually have a light on the loom, and there's a fixture here. I would normally use a light down when I'm doing something like that. So, because if you miss one of those threads, you end up with something like this. So this is the towel. This was the first towel that was done on this wall. And because then I noticed the issue, I cut it off and I didn't manage to see it, but so well, I'll bring it because it illustrates what can happen if you get the threading wrong. So you see there, can you all see?
It looks like an interesting design.
It does, but it's not supposed to be as well. It's all supposed to be true like that, but for a towel that's gonna go in our kitchen, we don't really care.
Right.
It dries the pots and it's fine.
so
But
it's just the side that you show, like some of the colored stripes are thinner than others, would that
well,
meant
they're
to
actually
be?
off because I threaded them incorrectly. Have a look at it.
Contrast it with the other side, which I
Yeah.
think it's the way it's.
Yeah,
supposed to be.
the other side is the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be just a diagonal line, but you can see it's broken.
Yeah, it looks like an intentional design feature.
Well, that's what I would tell you. If I was selling it to you, but it's incorrect, and that's because when I was threading it, I got it in the wrong place, and I didn't notice it first because it was white on white, and it's really difficult to see that. And then when I got into the next color, of course, it was really obvious.
Right.
By that time, I'd woven 4 inches, and I thought, the heck with it. I just weave it and
But
put
the
it on.
fact that like these are narrow and these are wide, that was intended.
Yes.
Okay, I know it was all intended, but that was
You know,
real.
some of it wasn't too. Pretty very kind. So that's the first thing you need to figure out. What are you going to make? How long is it going to be? How wide is it going to be? Are you going to use linen, cotton, wool, whatever? All of those things need to be considered up front. And then once you've made that decision, then we can go to the next slide. So this is a photograph on Camp Hill. This is what we call the stash. And I have one at home. It's not nearly as big as this, but I'm working on it. Because every weaver has a stash. And actually there are online stores where you can trade things in your stashes. It's very, and I've done it several times, it's great. There are several things in this photograph I want to draw your attention to. So the initial purpose was to say, okay, now you go and there's cottons on here, there's linens, there's a wall just like this on the other side with wool, and there are boxes and boxes and boxes at Camp Hill of donated yarns. The other thing that this photograph picks up is this. This is a warping mill. So you need to measure out the warp, right? All of those threads, so those 1,000 threads have got to be measured out to the length you want it, plus some waste and some shrinkage, and I have a spreadsheet that's helping me figure all that out. And then you've got to bring it all out. This is a warping mill. This is a warping frame. It's a simpler version of it. You can see there's a measured thread on here already. I think this is 3 or 4 yards. I also have one of these at home. It's a vertical one. It's really, I really like it. It's very easy to use. So you would measure it out here, and then this is Camp Hill, remember. So what we're doing there is producing these warps, and we chain them and we hang them so that when Bill is finished with his rugs, we cut his rugs off. A volunteer will take one of these chain warps and put it onto Bill's loom. So if you go to the next slide, this is me taking that same warp off and I'm chaining it. So I just pull it through loops, loopsy, 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 and then we hang it up until we're ready to use it. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering how, if you've got all those threads just wrapped around that, how you preserve the sequence. So this piece, and this one, this is a towel. I use this one every day, I love it.
Oh my God.
How do you preserve the sequence? What was that?
I said, but we watched it before it came.
Oh, yes, it's been washed, sorry, yes, I did not use this morning.
Mhm.
But how do you preserve that sequence? So you've wrapped all your threads around, right? It's important to the color, pattern, and texture of this that all of these threads go on the loom in this same sequence. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see there's a trick to it. When you're actually putting that warp on your frame, just like on here, you make a cross. You cross, so the first one goes that way, the next one goes this way, the next one goes this way, the next one goes this way. So you've got a cross in here. So if you look now, you can see this is the first thread, the second one, the third, and the fourth one. And you have to preserve that. If we go to the next slide. What we do to preserve it is when we take this is the same warp, we take it off the loom and we put 2 sticks through. They're called release sticks. And you can see the cross in here. You see it? And that is preserving, that's preserving the sequence of those threads all the way across the wall.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding what you mean by preserving the sequence.
Okay, so when I measured out these threads, it said measure out 20 light blue, whatever it was, I'd have to go to the end to see. 10 dark blue, 6 light blue, 6 red. So I wrap them all around, and then I chain it all together. And now I've got this whole chain of threads, and I take it over to the loom to put it on the loom.
Okay,
But I need to make sure that that sequence of threads goes onto the loom the same way that I measured it out. And the way
okay,
you do that is through this cross. So you cross it when you're measuring it out either on this one or on the round one. There are pegs on the round one as well. And you put that cross at one end. And then you chain it. When you take it to the loom, you put sticks through each side of that cross. So you're preserving the cross. You understand? I don't have a chain warp. with me.
that's all right.
Um,
Is that so they don't get twisted or,
yeah, so they don't, so you,
so the
when you're
blues,
threading it, So on this one, Rhonda, there are, I don't know, 20 threads here. So they go through the first 20 heddles. The next 40 threads are green. So the next 40 heddles get a green thread. So I need to make sure that the yellow ones don't go in where the green ones are supposed to be.
Okay, okay,
So that, when I'm putting this on here, it needs to lay out in the sequence that I want for my pattern. So you see, this is what the chain looked like. It's all sort of jumbled together, but up here at the cross.
oh,
you
they're
can
separated
see-
out,
You can see.
Okay,
the sequence on it.
right, okay,
So if you were to see this one, you would have seen the threads in that color, even though at that top end it would have all been jumbled up like this. So there's a mechanism here also, what's called a ravel, which helps you space out the threads. So on the back of this loom, you'll notice that the warp is spaced out nicely across the back. And it's deliberately done that way to sort of represent the width of the piece. But this was also chained at one point. So at one point, it was just a massive beyond that.
right.
But it was spaced out and then wound up.
So you're like constantly counting to make sure that you're getting them in the right way?
Always.
Okay,
Oh.
okay, so I'm just thinking,
Well, counting.
Yeah.
Figuring out how many do you need?
so
So
some,
what I usually do, Rhonda, is when I'm measuring these out, I put a counting thread through here.
okay,
So in either groups of 12 or 20, so I know I've got a batch of them. And then when I'm putting them onto the loom, I usually take 12 or 20, whatever it is, heddles and separate them from the others.
mm-hmm,
And then I put that group through and tie it on.
okay. That makes sense.
Because if you just go at it and go from one end to the other, you'll almost certainly have some mistakes, and it's much easier to catch them if you do them in small groups and check them.
That makes sense.
So that's the way you would do it. So the raddle helps you spread the groups. These pins are 1 inch apart. So if you know that you're making a piece that's 24 inches long, then you would spread this out over a raddle with that corresponding number of gaps in it. So do you want to just move this on? Sorry, I'm taking.
Great.
That's my little.
Yeah, the crochet hook, it was.
Yeah, whatever. Here it is. This is my slaying tool. It's called a slaying tool. So this is me getting ready to start pulling those warp threads through the heddles. So if you want to move this. So this is a different warp actually, but this just showed you each of the threads running through the heddles. This is where your pattern is created. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then forward through the reed as well. The reed is here. So once you've got all this, you tie it on the front and you put tension on it, and then you move to the next slide and we'll start weaving. So this is from the front of the loom now, looking towards the back. This is the reed, the head is behind it. And off you go. Weave. Once you're done, then these are just separators between the pieces. This is Camphill. Camphill loves to have long fringes on everything. So they always have lots of long fringes. So this is a chenille warp. There's a little gadget you can get, or you can do by hand with fringes. These are fringes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another one here. Yeah, these fringes. This is a Camphill fringe right here. So do you want to look down that? So once you've got the fabric, then this is a jacket. This is another jacket on the mannequin being cut. There's a bag there as well. And then if you move on, you will see some of the things in the shop. This is Charlene, you met her at the beginning. Here's one of her rag rugs. You'll see there's some other rugs here. This is in the shop at Camphill. We can move through these pretty quickly, Mark. This is, see some of the denim rugs over here. They also have a mosaic shop there. They have fiber art, so they knit and crochet. They have a woodworking studio there as well, and a mosaic room. So all of it goes in here, and it's sewed. Yeah, so these are some of the pieces.
Beautiful.
Just hanging up there in the gift shop, and there's one more, I think, the gift shop. So yeah, that's kind of a fabulous place. All right, let's talk about, we skipped over this whole thing. So once you've decided what you're going to make, it's probably some kind of pattern box. Here's a lace. The nice thing about weaving, though, is it's all been done before. This book was written by, and this is considered a Bible, and Marguerite Porter Davison. She lived in Bryn Mawr, and this was first published in 1944. She's long dead, but the book survives, and probably every weaver has a copy of this. And it shows just about every variation of thing you can do. The patterns, we'll see the patterns, we're going to talk about them in a minute, and what the woven piece looks like. Here is a more modern version of it in color. So you can go through these and look. And I do look through here and say, wow, oh, I love this. This is great. This is how to make it. These are the instructions here. You can do this. You can get a piece of graph paper and just lay it all out, figure it out. Do you want to just move us on one?
Yeah.
This is somebody who's sort of reverse engineering from a little sample. But there's a lot of coloring in on graph papers. Well, there used to be. Then the computer came along.
Oh,
And moves to the next one. Right, so now this is the language here. So this top section represents a view down onto the shafts. 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's an 8-shaft loom, then there'd be iterations of this up here. The other loom I have at home is a 10-shaft loom. And we'll use 8 of them. So this tells you, these are the colors here, white, blue, white, blue, white, blue. This is in header number 4. Get a white thread, 3 white thread. Yeah, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way across the wall. So this is just a plain setup. This tells you how to tie up those trebles. So it's basically saying these two, look at this. So you're tying 2 to one shaft, you're tying 2 to another shaft. So 1 and 2 go to one shaft, 1 and 3 go to one shaft, 2 and 4, and 3 and 4. So that's what that is telling you. It's called the tie-up. This is your weaving sequence. So this is throwing the shuttle through. 4 passes of white, 4 passes of blue, 4 passes of white, 4 passes of blue. So if you hit the key, the next slide, this is what you'll get. If you set up your hose this way, do your tie up this way, and then weave in this sequence. So this is the first pass of the shuttle. You can actually see, if you sort of squint a bit, you'll see this block here is all white. Well, it's all white because this is all white and this is all white. And then you've got white against blue here, according to this pattern. If you look at this pattern, you'll see white, 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 white. This is, but if you go to the next slide, this is it in the weaving software that I have. So I use this all the time now, and this is where you can really play. Because on the weaving software, all you have to do is click here, change the colors, change the tie-up, change the sequence.
and then it fills in what it looks like.
Yeah, fills in.
Oh.
Go to the next slide. So this is Fiberworks. This is the software I use. And again, these are 4 shafts, this is the tie-up, and this is the weaving sequence. White and blue.
Mhm.
There's a color palette, you can switch in any ones you want, you can change any of these sequences, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see now, I've changed some of this. You can see I'm still a very similar thread in here, but here, I'm using more of a quilt pattern. But the weaving sequence is the same. The tie-up is different, that's a typical twill tie-up right there. And you can do this, you can set up your petals any way you like, in fact. Well, so this. I don't have anything that looks like that this woven, because frankly, I don't find that to actually put. So, but this would be a twill right here. That's a typical twill pattern, and that's what we're going to do on here, following those instructions. These are all twill. It's one of my favorite. It's like the of it. This is a plain weave. This is called tabby. It's just a plain weave. And you can see there's nothing. The pattern here is created by the colors.
Mhm.
Whereas the pattern here, well, it's a combination of colors and the weave structure itself. This is just a plain weave. So nothing fancy. Now, if you go to the next slide, Mark.
Mhm.
We're going to show you about what I call weaving magic. So what's happening here? This is a plain weave. It's a plain weave. It's using 4 shafts. It's tying up 4 shafts. And you can see your weaving sequence is using all 4. But for tabby, you don't need to use 4. You only need to use 2 because you've got threads and they're just alternating. Put it shut it through, and then alternate to put it through, you alternate to put it through. So you have the ability on a 4 shaft loom to put 2 lots of yarn threads. And if you connect them on the edge, so here's the loom, this is the way it would be set up. That would be on like that. Half of these threads would be on the top 2 shafts. Half of them would be on the bottom 2 shafts. What I'm not showing here is how you actually tie the treadles. It's a little bit more complicated, but what happens at the end if you connect the one side, then you end up with cloth that's twice as wide when it comes up. So you've woven 2 pieces of cloth at the same time and connected them in the middle. So this is a 36-inch loom. It's 4 shafts, so you can make a piece that's 72 inches wide.
Wow.
To me, that's just magic.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Now, to take that a step further, if you put one color in these 2 shafts and another color in these 2 shafts, you can actually use a technique called pickup, where you actually pull the colors from one piece of cloth into the other and vice versa. And if you do that, then you can create something that looks like this.
Wow.
And this is Laurie and my wedding song.
Which is what? Wow.
I told Laurie after I finished this piece, I said, if I ever say I'm going to do a piece like this again, shoot me.
And then it comes out like reverse on.
Yes, it's reversed on the other side. So what you're doing here is you're weaving 2 pieces of cloth at the same time.
Yeah.
You can actually pull them apart. You can see it.
Wow.
2 extra pieces of cloth. You're connecting them on both ends.
Mine.
But what you're doing, and you have to do it all manually, and all these are calculated on a spreadsheet. You have to go through and pull up the dark threads into the upper layer, and then throw your shuttle through to keep them up. And then you have to put the light threads down into the dark layer. And that's called double weave pickup. And it gives you a lot of flexibility.
How long does it take to fix?
A long time.
It was actually made on this loom. The longest time when he was spent figuring out the notes. So what I did was I took an Excel spreadsheet for each note. I put the staff in and then figured out exactly which cells needed to be dark and which needed to be light. And then I had to count across. Yeah, it took a long time. Do you want me to go back? Now, when I was talking to somebody
Any more? That's good.
last year that I was going to do this, and they said, is there a Jewish connection in your presentation?
Is it
And
you?
yes, there is. And here is my house. I did not make it. I did not make it. Do you want to just go to the next slide? So now, were you paying attention? Here's a close-up of it. What read is that?
It's not twill.
No, it's not twill, it's a plain weave. It's a plain weave, it's just a plain tabby weave. And again, the interest in the piece is created by the use of color in the weft. So the warp is running this way, this is what you want to just click on. So I'm not sure if this is the color who made it. It was made in the studio in Sfat, and when we were in Israel, I took a trip out there, and it's a very arty sort of thing.
Think we've been there.
What's that?
Think we've been in that studio.
Have you? Yeah. They had the loom, he's got his instructions up here, which I thought was really interesting. He's also using a flying shuttle, you see it here, and he's got his handle. And this is probably the right answer. I don't know if it was woven on this loom or not, but it was woven in the studio. The challenge with weaving these is, if you go to the next slide, there's a whole manual component to it. Because I don't know what the technical name for this is. I call it.
Yeah,
color.
Accurate.
The actual has to be woven separately, sewn on separately, and then we've got pieces down here that have to be separate, and it's got to be fringed. So I know, and you have.
There's a studio at Kesher Israel in Westchester, which was partially funded by the Kibila of Chester County. And it's open to anybody in the 5-county area that's served by the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. And it's booked constantly.
Wow.
But it's available to anybody from Temple Bethlehem who would like to go make a talit or challah cover or matzah cover or whatever piece of Judaica they'd love to make.
Thank you. And I think the next slide is Q&A. So I know there was a lot of stuff there. I'll give it to an hour. Does anybody have a question? Happy to ask or answer.
You come up with a really nice pattern that you like
Yes.
with your program. How long does it take you to set up the thread in the loom before you make the first?
Right. So it depends. For this one, the warp was really easy. So measuring out the warp didn't take very long. Putting it on the loom didn't take very long. I mean, a few hours. Weaving took this one, as I said, this is a large tablecloth. There are 1,000 threads in the warp. This, it took me, and it's not just time, Jerry, it's just 500 threads, and I can't see another thread. I've got to go and have a coffee or read a book or do a crossword. So I'll leave it, I just have to walk away from it. I rarely do these things in one sitting. So it probably took a couple of days to measure out the threads. Once I did that, then I moved them over to the loom, not this one, the big one I had at home. it took hours. To put it through, as I say, this is a very wide dented reed. The one I used for this was 20 spaces to the inch. So it was very hard on the eyes with my little thing, and I'm sort of feeding it back through. It's got it into all the headers, and I was on a little used string headers like this. So, so that took hours. But for me, I just get absorbed in it. I can just sit there for a couple of hours and just thread those things through. But then I need to walk away from it. So I'm dreading I can focus for a few hours with them. So this probably took a week to set up in elapsed time. And then
Wow.
a long period, though, it took quite a long time to read. But once you're weaving, you're sitting there, and you just get into a rhythm mode. And for me, it's just a very calming, just to throw it through, catch it, throw it through. It just does a lot.
Can you, when you're doing that, if somebody's hanging out with you, can you sit there and have a conversation? And
No.
still just asking for a friend.
No. So sometimes, it depends. So sometimes I hear Laurie coming downstairs and I'll go 15, 16, 17, so she knows it's starting to leave them alone. Don't worry them. Don't worry them.
At the beginning and at the end of that tablecloth, how do you cut it so that it doesn't come unraveled till you get it?
Well, this is actually hemmed.
Okay.
Well, not a sewing machine.
Yeah, it's hemmed. Yeah, I actually bought a sewing machine. We had a sewing machine that we used especially.
But
Because
when you begin and end, how does it not come unraveled until you get that hem?
so what you typically do, and you can see it on here, I've got some separators here. So when this whole thing comes off, what I usually do is I'll put just a stay thread across. I'll just run a long stitch all the way across and keep it in place. And then I'll cut it off, and then I'll roll it, iron it, and then hem it properly. And in my early, where's that cloth? Yeah, here, this is what the throw styles of me. These hands are just horrendous. They're just terrible. But I was learning. So here's a technique. You don't need to hem these. This is called hem stitching. And while the piece is still on the loom, you actually go across and create this special hemmed edge. And then when you take it off the loom, you can just cut it right across. And it won't come out because you've actually
Any questions?
tied.
I don't
I thought you did that by hand.
No, that is done by hand. That is done by hand. And the ones I'm making right now on the loom at home, they're all being hand stitched on the loom. Which means that when I take it off, I can just stick it out, it's a more separate. And then what you really need to do after you finish this is wet finish it. Which is get in water, warm water, a little bit of soft detergent, and just get the fibers.
Colleen has a question.
Together. And you can feel the difference when it comes up to the loom.
You can read it.
You
We have
can
an,
feel that. I think it feels like a blanket when it comes off the loom. It feels, well, it feels more like this. This is a crook, and it didn't really fall at all. But you can see it's very. It did the whole years ago. Now, what I did with this one, I took a wire brush. And I brushed it with a wire brush because it was hard to clean it. So this is a sample for blanket I made for my sister's wedding.
you have a question from online.
Pardon?
Corinne has a question.
Oh, yes.
Can you read it?
Hello to you.
No, this is Colleen.
Oh, Helene, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
She says, Does the size of the thread determine which loom to use? Or is one loom capable of weaving a fine silk and a chunky wool?
Yes, the same loom can.
The same loom can do either one.
Obviously,
But you gotta use different heddle,
the same petals,
same metals,
different reed.
different reed. Okay.
So if you have, a very fine reed and you put a coarse wool through it, the movement of the reed back and forth will weight it and it will seem to the thread.
Oh,
So you always have to make sure you've got the right dented reed in the loom. So when I did this one, this was a very fine thread. I don't know if I have one of them there. Or this piece, I definitely have some of this. This was also done in a very fine, and that thread is right there. The blue and the pink on the table. So heddles are the same, loom is the same.
the reed is different.
It's a reed.
Okay. If anyone else on Zoom has questions, you can unmute and ask questions.
Thank you. In the heddle limits how fat of a yarn you can use.
Well, yes,
And at a certain point,
well, yes,
you know, it's that big, so you
yes.
can't have really fat
Well-
chunky fiber. That opens up that much.
It does, but you really, if you're using such a thick yarn, you should really put it in a weft. So here's an example. This, oh, in fact, both of these. So this rug, this is made with Stephen Walsh's old flannel bed sheets. So when he was done with them, we ripped them up into 1.5-inch strips. And they became the weft for this. So this is the warp running this way. And those, yeah, went through the weft, no problem. You would not put that in the warp.
So what do you use for the warp?
This is a cotton, this particular warp is a cotton, it's an X4 copper warp cotton.
Oh, okay.
This one is similar, this is made with mock cotton. So the old fashioned mops with
String head mop.
thank you, string head mops, yes. You can actually buy that cotton in combs, and that's what this is. That's a weft. The warp is a very fine cotton, strong carpet cotton. So you would typically not put a thick yarn or a shredded yarn like this, a shredded fiber like this, or Bill's denim rugs.
Right.
You would not put those in the warp.
What do you do if a thread breaks?
So I have my trusty little pin cushion right here, and I use these T-pins. And what I put it, oh, that's another loom, I forgot, yes. Says it right on the box. Enjoying everything tonight, okay. We messed up. What you typically do is introduce a new thread in the black, bring it through the header to the one that's broken, bring it all the way up into the fabric, tie it in. You have the broken end, probably move out to the back, and then just introduce the new thread into the weaving. So at some point then, those are going to meet up. You can always bring the one from the back and weave it back in. And then when the piece comes off the loom, you would just weave those ends in somewhere and just hide them in the cloth. So it happens all the time at Camp Hill. They are very enthusiastic weavers. Normally, when he's weaving, one bang of the weave would be enough. If you are really, if the piece is really drawing in, what happens is the end threads wear away. And so it's not unusual to have to add in new threads as you go, especially at Camp Hill, because the walks that go on those rooms are very long. Whereas these, I'm pretty much done. I mean, I can leave a towel in an hour, probably less.
Once it's all set up.
Once it's- Yeah. Yeah, so that's, this is the towel here. What it looks like. This is, well.
How do you transport that loom? Do you?
It folds up.
It folds up, okay.
That's why Lori's here.
Yeah. You need help. Help with it. And then just put tension back onto it.
So
Wow.
are carpets and rugs made in a similar way on looms like that? I mean,
Yeah, industrial skin.
industrial,
Yeah,
right?
industrial skin. I have a blanket as well as woven in Yorkshire. So I grew up in an area where there was a lot of weaving down in Yorkshire, Lancashire, it's a big textile area. And when I was growing up, there were active mills in the town that were producing blankets and carpets.
Mhm.
Halifax, which is very close by, had a big carpet factory. They can be produced in a lot of different ways. I was watching a video, actually just a few days ago, of a whole line of workers working on a large Persian rug. It was on a frame, a vertical frame, and they were sitting just next to each other, and they all had small pieces, and they were just spreading them through my hand, and then they had what looked like a comb, which is equivalent to an open reed, and they were just banging it down. So that would be a hand knotted rug. You can actually make turkey rugs. We have a small sample at home that we made, and I'm going to make another
Mhm.
sometime soon. But industrially, that's how you would do it. You sort of loop the weft through and then cut it.
Okay,
But you have a machine.
yeah.
Why? It's interesting to go to those places and have a look at them. I
Yes,
mean,
it
I don't know how many of them still exist in this country. Unfortunately, Lloyd's dad was very active in the textile industry, but I wasn't in my weaving phase at the time.
Mm.
Plus, the mills he used to go to were all in the south, so it was not, just pop up to New York and have a look in the mill. And then they closed the production went overseas. But there is a resurgence in hand weaving. There's a lot of interest. There is a guild of hand weavers in Philadelphia, and many large towns have them. There's a lot of online weavers who are happy to reach out and help and talk to you and sell you classes. And I actually did go to the class right before I got my degree, and that's where I wrote this on that kind of a loom. And that's when I realized that, oh yeah, so,
What's those?
yeah, these are actually twisted by hand. But what was interesting, this was on the last night of the class, and the person who taught the class plays fiddle, and her husband plays guitar. So we were in an old barn, and we were all sitting around a big table, all in our blankets, and we were twisting, and they were sitting off to the side. It was just surreal. It was surreal. So if anybody wants to have a try, you're more than welcome to come and try. That's the end of my prepared remarks. Unless anybody has any questions. Any more questions?
I think I'm gonna shut down the Zoom then. Okay,
Thank you, everybody on Zoom.
thanks to the Zoom people.
Thank you, Pete.
You're getting some good applause from the Zoom.
Okay.